He would live a few more years in order to tell me about the game that was being played, that game being the effort to weaponize space.
Weapons in space is still a big enigma. Black covert operations have always been trying to do something like that.
Von Braun's purpose in life during the last years of his life, his dying years, was to educate the public and decision makers about why space-based weapons are dumb, dangerous, destabilizing, too costly, unnecessary, unworkable, undesirable. The strategy that Wernher von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in '74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. We were told that they had killer satellites. We were told that they were coming to get us and control us, the dirty commies, that whole story. First, the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons.
The ballistic missile defense system is probably a pipe dream in the sense that if what it's designed for is that you know where it's coming from. And when we had Russia, there was a 50-50 chance that you knew about where it would be coming from.
In 1977, I was at a meeting in Fairchild Industries in a conference room called the War Room. And in that room were a lot of charts on the walls with enemies, identified enemies, names that people had never heard of, names like Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi. But we were talking then about terrorists, the potential terrorists. No one had ever talked about this before, but this was the next stage after the Russians against whom we were going to build space-based weapons, these terrorists.
They wanted a weapon system they could put in space that would stop a ballistic missile. That was the concept.
This is 1977, and they were talking about creating a war in the Gulf region when there was $25 billion in the space-based weapons program that yet had not been identified. It wasn't called the Strategic Defense Initiative, at least, until 1983. This weapons system then had obviously been going on for some time that I didn't know anything about.
When Star Wars was brought out as an idea, which was before Reagan actually, and incorporated into his administration, it became pretty much a window dressing, as one people would call it, but there was a lot of truth behind what they were trying to do. They knew the basic principle of what they wanted to do.
So I stood up in this meeting in 1977 and it said, I'd like to know why we're talking about space-based weapons against these enemies. I'd like to know more about